We want to introduce ourselves, right? We'll do it anyhow. As Fabian just said, I'm Rainer, and I have no skills. And I still have to deal with that, right? I still have to find a job that pays well. That's what I want. So I found my niche in helping other people to perform. So throughout my career, I've always been in positions where my job was to get good people together, great people, and make them perform. I did this at Adidas, at UEFA and FIFA. I worked a lot in football. I did this at Accenture, at a consultancy. And now I have the job to do that at Project A. And it's a super interesting job. And I hope that from the different experiences that I collected, I have something that is worth sharing here today.
Good morning. My name is Simon. I'm Director Operations, People and Data at Spryker. At Spryker, we're building commerce operating systems. And we're doing that in order to provide our customers with a way to sell their products and their services in a very, very innovative way. I have quite an extensive background in a corporate at Audi. And this is entirely new. This was entirely new to me just 2 years ago. But for the most of you, this should at least feel sort of familiar. When starting a startup, the most important thing is to get a product, to launch it, to find customers that actually pay for it. And when you don't run out of money, you reach that second phase, which is a phase that we call transition or scale. So the most important part here is to identify key growth levers, to identify how to structure your organization. It's all about product market fit. And when you succeeded in that too, it's all about growth. So how to grow a company, how to get more customers, scale the teams, and equip the teams with the right knowledge. By show of hands, who of you considers themselves in as part of the first phase, so scale, startup? Nice. So roughly 25%. Who is in the scaling phase? And who is in the growth path? Yeah, most of you. Cool, but it's a very nice split. The challenge that we had is to identify things that are relevant for actually all of you. And what we came up with are 6 rules to build performing organizations. And the first rule is one that was rated the most important among all the founders and CEOs that we asked before we had our talk.
And for some reason, Simon has put a goat on this chart. I have no idea why.
It's a very dynamic antelope. The antelope is our spirit animal at Spryker. And we are actually in that growth phase. So if you want to know more about Spryker, check us out at spryker.com or talk to all the people that are here representing Spryker.
All right, thanks a lot. Still looks like a little bit like a goat. Okay. Talent, rule number 1. So as we said, now here's the ultimate wisdom, the 6 rules for building successful companies. No, it's just 6 rules that we think are most important to us. Hire the best people possible. The best hire that I think I ever made, and I think whenever we did a dry run, I mentioned a different person. Today I'll take Bas. Bas here, hello, say hello to Bas. Bas was an incredible hire. Bas had, and forgive me that, but not a lot of skills, just like myself. Or experience. I mean, he wasn't like in jobs like for 10, 20, 50 years already. But what was very obvious was that he was super eager to learn, very hardworking, and he was in for the right reasons. He understood what we want to achieve in our company, so he identified himself with the purpose that we had. He was highly motivated, intrinsic. He had the right attitude. He was always somebody who was driving community within Project A. And he was just like an ingredient that you put into your team, and everybody performs better because of that. He was very clearly an A hire, And there's this rule that some people say A people hire A people, people hire C people. And that's because of the fear of competition, right? If you're really good, then you don't have a problem with bringing into your company other really great people. If you see yourself as not that great, you probably try to not be too much in that competition, so you're more happy to welcome people who are less good than yourself even, and then that drags the quality of your team down. So to hire people like Buzz, that's the best thing you can do. People who are very ambitious, have the right attitude, and have the right spirit, and then skills are also important. Experience is probably in our industry. It's not totally unimportant, but it comes on third, fourth place or so. And this is what we very much recommend to really look after, get these people, and put together the best team that you can.
Let me summarize that point that Rainer just made. First, very important message, get the right people on board. When getting those people on board, it's very important to pay attention to attitude, to pay attention to potential. Third most important is skills. And the fourth most important, given the fact that we're getting ahead of new challenges, we're confronted with new challenges every single day, is experience. Because when entering a new field, experience is actually a thing that does matter the least out of that list. Third thing, when you have to hire people, you have to pay attention to salary. But over time, and that's roughly estimated after 2 years, salary becomes less important and purpose trumps salary. So make sure the A players you have in your team are have their role, have a clear purpose, and are happy within your company, because people are in fact your key asset. Second thing, we call it the backpack. When you have the right people in place, that's great, but you need to equip them for the journey ahead. And what you have to do, and this generally happens within the onboarding phase, is you need to equip them. And what we do at Spryker is we take half a day to get the people onboarded on the basic processes. We take another session that we do with the departments in order to introduce them to their supervisors, to introduce them to the people surrounding them, to introduce them to the most important processes that this department has. And the department head is supposed to give a clear guidance on the priorities the people need to follow. There has to be a clear target and a clear vision where people are heading. And then there's a third pillar. And the third pillar is what we call a CEO lunch, CEO breakfast. So one of our two managing directors is talking about mindset, is talking about the vision behind Spryker. It's talking about how to do things. And this mindset is actually what is super important for us to grow.
So summary. Make sure to spend enough effort and time on onboarding. It feels a little bit like you're taking people out of what they should actually do, the actual work, but onboarding is something super crucial. You bring the way your company works, the mindset, the processes, the priorities to your people, and you make sure that everybody knows where to go when they have a problem and when they want to understand how they can perform better, how they can make a career, etc. Super important. And once you do that, and the people go through the process, and it's something that we didn't put here on the picture, but also make sure to make good use of the offboarding. At some point, most people leave their company in one or the other way, right? So use this to learn and to iterate and to learn for the next round of people that go through the journey with your company, and make this an iterative process. Number 3, lead by example. It's probably clear, right? I mean, you should talk the talk and walk the walk, and everybody knows that. But there are several aspects to this. One is you can lead by example internally within your own company. you do what you ask other people to do, and you show that in the all hands that you probably have, or the town hall meetings, or the fixes, etc., in the meeting structures and in your daily work. Something that is not to be underestimated is, if you're leading an organization, is that you make yourself visible to your own people through external platforms. Employees take a lot of satisfaction out of it, and it increases the credibility of the positions that you have a lot if your people see that your positions are something that you also communicate externally. I myself started to be a little bit more active on LinkedIn like 3 months ago or so, and I was actually asked, why do you do that? And actually, if I look at who is reading my posts, who's going through that, it's a lot of people from Project A, from our own company, and that's totally fine by me. But if you think about people who are very inspiring leaders, people want to work for these companies because they see that these leaders are actually, they are visible. And I think if you represent company values or also personal values in public to a wider audience, also internally it has an effect and just becomes even more credible. Plus the super nice effect that it hopefully helps you to attract talent, because people just know who you are and what you want. Leading by example also means to give good feedback, and I think good, and that you can debate, but in our opinion, a good direction for good feedback is the concept of radical candor. Who has never heard of radical candor? Okay, so most of you have. If you didn't yet, just go to one of the known big online bookstores and check for Radical Candor. There's a book, and it's a fast read. You can, in my opinion, summarize the whole really great book into 2 things, and that is challenge your people functionally while at the same time deeply care about them personally. And if you put that on 2 dimensions of a chart, you should be in the upper corner, right? By saying, I really care about you as a person, but when it's about what we do here, I also really challenge you. And if you achieve that, you will actually really yourself lead by example and give your people good feedback, which they always ask for and which they always need. And the third thing here, a good perspective of where to go. We made a good example, and actually most companies that I know that perform well, I think have that is, try to establish a culture of non-pretentiousness. Have people, no matter where they are in the hierarchy, not being pretentious. Example, if you stay in a hope, like most of you stay, for the party tonight, that will happen in the main hall at the site, at this little gallery. The DJ that will actually hopefully entertain you with good music is Dr. Martin Lötsch. It's our chief data officer. And he's just super smart and really good at building data warehouses, machine learning, etc. I think 10 years ago he won the world championship in robotics football. And that sounds funny, but it's a really difficult thing to do. But whenever we do a party, he's just saying, yeah, no worries, I do the DJ. And he's actually really good at that too. And then he just brings his discs along and his turntables, etc., and he just does that, and he's just a super normal person. That's just really nice, and that's a good culture, and you make people perform like that.
Apart from the fact that he's actually great at data engineering, and we built a data warehouse together, and he and his team did a great job there. Let me summarize that point, leading by example. Share your visions, thoughts, give clear and very good feedback to your employees. Kill the pretentiousness, and one aspect that is super important is no politics, no bullshit. Why is it so important? Us working in startups, one of the key metrics that we have to look at is speed and time. Politics, and coming from a corporate background, I know that. Politics take a lot of time. And this is time we don't have and we shouldn't spend on internal discussions.
We have this slight disagreement on. No, we don't have disagreement on that. I think we all agree politics are not great. Just like my personal opinion, I've also worked at a corporate with Adidas. My impression is that there's actually no industry where it's more political than startups. But that doesn't mean that it's great. Try to kick the politics out. This is, we're also happy to debate, maybe over a coffee or so.
Yeah. When you see it, try to kill it. To summarize that point, create a culture just by being active, by being out there, by talking the talk, walking the walk. Number 4, the org chart. We do meet a lot for coffee, and we try to figure out that special formula, that one org chart that is just perfect, that is absolutely amazing, and everybody is super happy about that. The organization performs great. Bad news, there is no such thing as the perfect org chart. In fact, it doesn't matter whether you have a hierarchical structure, whether you have that classical tree, whether you have a very agile organization, as long as it fits to your business. What do I mean by that? When you have a hierarchical organization and you need to staff a customer project and it takes 2 or 3 weeks to staff that, you're in trouble. If you have a very agile organization but nobody knows who's in charge, you're in trouble as well. And you need to follow the business goals. So you need to be able to achieve them. One very good example we had at Spryker is roughly 1 year ago, we started with the hypothesis that organizing sales teams in verticals is the most amazing idea ever. Well, a couple of companies did that before, but we were just ramping up. And so we started that. And what we figured out is that each and every vertical had to come up with ideas how to organize lead generation, how to address customers, how to talk to the bigger clients, how to talk to the smaller clients. And it didn't work at all. So we checked out our data. Lead generation went down. We pivoted the entire approach after 6 months. And now we have 1 team for lead generation, 1 team for general sales, 2 teams actually for enterprise sales, and 1 key account management team. And this is working very well. So make sure to think about your business goals and adapt your organizational structure to it.
So again, summarizing, structure is important, but it follows. It's secondary. You have to make sure that your organization is able to meet your business targets. That's the number 1. That's what matters. So find the structure that does this. Roles and responsibilities should be does everybody, who doesn't know what MECE is? Okay, it means mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. So that basically means make sure that if you define your roles and responsibilities, everything is covered, there's no blank, but at the same time they don't overlap. To have it like complete, but at the same, so nothing is missing, but also things don't overlap. Otherwise you're running into trouble and people start fighting about responsibilities or stuff just doesn't get done. And your customer expectations have to be met. And if you meet these things, then whatever structure fit, and actually any structure you can build, you can achieve that with different types of structure. The actual structure of the org chart is secondary.
One thing maybe to add, also make sure to ask your employees about their happiness with the current structure. Because just by asking them, by collecting the feedback, you get a very good indication whether you're on the right path or not.
Exploit your network radically. Now, I mean, like, if you're a startup or a grown-up, like having a good network is super essential, right? I mean, you don't like build widely on your brand and all the assets that you have, or so you really depend on that. In order to really make the most out of the network that you have, it requires a certain skill. And this skill is intellectual humility. This is something that when we as Project A from the investment side invest somewhere, something that we very much look into before we invest. We want to see founders who are intellectually humble, who have intellectual humility. And what we mean by that is people who are really great, but at the same time are super open to learn. No matter how great they are, they still understand that they can basically learn something super important and relevant for their business from all the world that surrounds them. And that's not an easy thing, because probably to be a founder, you need, I mean, like, what's the likelihood to be successful as a founder? It's not very big. Like, statistically, it's actually very low. So you have to, like, have quite a healthy, good, positive opinion about yourself to actually start a business. But then at the same time, to have this humbleness, this humility, and understand I can learn from everybody. This is what allows you to exploit your network and to really make something out of your network. And then you have basically two types of your network. You have your external one, that's the more obvious one. That is like here today, for example. Here today, you have 1,000 people you can learn something from. Not only here during the talks, they hopefully help a little bit, but there are like a lot of super interesting people here. Just talk to them. If you don't know what to talk about, say, hey, do you already have this green sticker? Or don't you? If you have nothing else that you want to talk about. Just like use this, make the maximum use out of that. And you have everything else. You have the network of your investors and about your friends and family and whatever you can find. What's often underestimated is the internal network that you have. If you're a company, you have your employees. And your employees are usually front-end developers, back-end developers, marketeers, HR people, and whatever like they signed up for. But their true value goes far beyond that. They are a network that you have within your own company. They know people, they know probably the next best hire that you should do, and you wouldn't probably think about asking your own people for the next hire that you want to do. They might have very good contacts to clients that you want to close, and they might have ideas beyond their own expertise area that is just like mind-blowing. Recommendation, create formats where you basically get to that point. Allow for what we call the serendipity effect. Like, to give you an example, Project A organizes once per month what we call the IT open space. And as part of that IT open space, years back, we had our IT team, and they had this asset that we used in B2C e-commerce, was called Even Z. And at some point in this context, they thought about, why don't we spin that off and make that a company? And this company today, well, is the most successful company in our first fund. It's actually called Spryker. So this is what can happen if you just allow for formats that don't have a clear target objective or agenda. We disagree on that one, but I think...
We disagree on that one too.
But Simon can explain that better.
The reason why we disagree on that is that I think as long as you have a vision and as long as you have a plan, it doesn't really matter if you end up somewhere else. And the example we used in the preparation of that talk is Columbus discovering America. So he had a clear target in mind, which was obviously not America. And he ended up in America, which is still quite great and quite an achievement. Let's summarize that point. And
there is a goat.
You added that one.
I had to put it somewhere. This is Hennes, the mascot of the best football club in the world, 1. FC Köln.
Oh, coming from Munich, that really breaks my heart. But okay, two things I would like to add. The first one is break silos. So in growing your organization, you will always end up structuring a team, building up that team, and what you have to do every once in a while is break those silos and just make sure that your people are connected within your organization. And you can achieve that by doing very, very small things. I can see Lisa here. She is our HR lead. And one person in our team, Janina, she just had that idea that she would like to do a gathering. And because of the fact that our spirit animal is an antelope, we called it the herd news. So just people coming together for movie nights, for office Olympics, for a cocktail night where we just invited somebody to do cocktails. And what happened was that people started to talk to each other. And that happened independent of the teams. And you have to make sure that you allow those formats and you need to foster those platforms in order to make sure that the communication keeps on flowing. The second aspect is actually a recommendation. I got that recommendation myself. It's a talk, or actually a lecture given by Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, and it dates back to 2015. He had that course at Stanford University, and he gathered a couple of people from the Silicon Valley who know a couple of things about how to grow organizations. And it's called blitzscaling. And one of the most important factors within that talk is the network effect. So make sure to check it out on YouTube. It's really great. Learn and share the knowledge is the statement that we would like to do, and use your networks for that. During the first talk today, when opening the conference, Rainer already mentioned the execution gap. And the execution gap is a thing you can experience every single day. Our vision is here, our ambition is there, however, we're just stuck at the status quo. And there are a couple of things you can do. The thing that works best, or worked best for us, is MVP everything. One very simple example for that. When Project A and OnePeak, our second large investor, invested into Spryker beginning of 2018, we were faced with a slight challenge that we had to grow the CV's income in HR from 1,200 the previous year to up to 5,000. So what did we do? We just took 10K, distributed them across all the platforms, and talked to a couple of headhunters, looked at the figures 3 to 4 weeks later, and invested in the top 3. Long story short, at the end of the year, we had 6,780 CVs, and we were thus able to meet our growth targets in terms of hires.
So the principle here, I hope, is clear. Just like to get to the larger achievements, test stuff. And before you test, decide at what point in time which results tell you that it was successful or not successful. And not successful doesn't mean that you failed. It still means that you successfully conducted a test. You need to be open to that, otherwise you will never get into that mode. You need a good fellow culture. But in principle, you say, this is my hypothesis, and now I will take my journey to there, and at that point I will decide, test successful, we continue, or test not successful, we try something else. And this should be a principle always for everything you do. And this way you can do the steps that are digestible and small enough in order to reach your vision and your bigger goals. And this is what we mean by MVP everything. A lot of companies struggle to actually say, okay, it didn't work out, we don't continue on that because of the principle and the psychological effect of sunk cost. So you don't want to give it up because you already invested so much in it. Or another thing that can go wrong is that you say, okay, it's great, we continue, but I've invested so much in building this MVP, I don't want to give that one up. And as we initially said, now tear it down and now do it for real. But they say, maybe we can still use that for another half a year, 1 year, 2 years, and you just add up the technical debt, for example, in IT, and it just gets worse. So probably at some point you have to decide, okay, test successful, but as we agreed initially, now tear it down and build it for real. We said it's 6, in fact it's 7. We give you 1 extra just because we have the time. No, because this is really important. And this adds another dimension to it. Everything that we said here affects your company, affects your business through the different development stages that you have. And one thing that's very important for us is you need somebody who like takes the responsibility for that. Who in this room is a founder? Okay? Who of you is working in HR? And who is working in a like operations related, like COO or similar? So this is exactly the three groups that we expected being the most here. And this is usually a task to really like take all that stuff and guide the company through the development. It's usually somewhere between founder, HR, operations. So what's the right answer? Who should do that? Anybody?
Everybody.
Sorry? Everybody. So the truth is, the ugly truth is that most companies that we see, nobody is really doing it. And the reason is that everybody says everybody should do it. And like in football, you know, where you say like should always be clear who's going after the ball. If that's not clear, then there might be actually two defenders standing there and everybody trusts the other one will take it. And the striker is just running in the middle between them and just shooting a goal. And you look very stupid. It's very important that you have that you give somebody the task to actually really do that. And that's tough because founders very often say, this is so important, I have to look after that. But then they don't have time and they always have to collect more money, like for the next financing round. And then they push it over to HR. But HR in super early stage very often is a role that is combined with running the reception desk and 1 million other things. And mostly it's recruiting, so not perfect there. And like a strong operations position in most early startups doesn't even exist. So what we are saying is make sure that you have somebody who's actively doing that, who's actively steering that. It's an active role. You really have to go and do that. It's not happening by itself.
What is very important though is that this person is enabled by the top management. So typically the founders and the MDs, because if you assign that role to a person and you don't back him or her up, then it's doomed to fail as well. Let us summarize that point. What you should do in managing your organizations actively throughout all those development stages we pointed out in the very beginning of our talk is reflect and contextualize your status. What stage am I in at the moment? What are my key goals? How does my organization look like? What are the people like that I have in the organization now? And what do the people look like or the profiles look like that I'm aiming for? Second, re-evaluate and think about ways to innovate your organization, to make them better, to maybe introduce a different principle. At Spryker, in our tech and product team, we introduced a very agile way to do things in order to be able to meet the customer requirements and in order to deliver our products in time. Third, very important in changing an organization is to have a mindset where change is perceived as a good thing. Why is that so important? Because this enables you to introduce changes a lot faster. And at the same time, you guarantee that the people are more happy about those changes and you take them along the journey, you give them an active role in that journey. And that's the fourth part, communicate and implement those changes and ask your employees whether they are happy, whether all the things are clear or not.
So, summary, really hire the best people. Then once you have them, equip them, make sure that they can perform, that they don't only come in great, but that you help them to achieve great things. Lead by example. Don't focus too much on like structure, but like align it with your business goals. Make sure that the structure follows your business. Use your network and MVP everything. And if you do all that, guide your company through the different stages in an active way. This is what we want to give to you here now. And I think we have 3 minutes for questions, comments, anything. the rockstar mode versus the superstar mode in Radical Candor. You want to answer that?
I think you're the ambassador of Radical Candor, so I think you're the best one to answer.
My impression, and correct me if you see it or say it if you see it differently. For me, the difference in the book between rockstar and superstar and Radical Candor is a lot about if you have. Or if to have people who are more specialists or more generalists, if you have rather people who are like very good, very deeply in a specific area, versus people who at some point in their career rather take a track that includes more people management and goes more on a management track. Do you agree to that? Yeah. Okay. That is important. I think most companies actually are. That is something that you should, in my opinion, offer at some point of your growth. I think your initial slides show through the different stages that at the beginning you probably need mostly generalists because you're just a super small company and everybody needs a little bit to do everything. And then the more you grow, you have the chance of specifying more and more. The way we address it at Project A is that at the more junior levels, everybody's on one track and should like try to develop actually both directions, and then you see who is better at one or the other. And it's not that one or the other role is better or stronger or has a higher value or so. Ideally, you have a company where and that's again another concept, but a T-shaped skill set, where you have people who are like a little bit good at everything, but have like one speciality where they're really, really deep and strong. It's good if you're open to have people in your company who have a slight bigger tendency on that part of the T and some who are stronger on that part of the T. And the mix of the two, my opinion, to have these both type of profiles, that's what makes you really strong. We take basically that step so you go at Project A in the hierarchy, you go through junior, medium, senior, and then the next step is basically either you become a specialist or a head of, and then you're either one of the two, but both bring tremendous value to an organization.
And I guess it's very important to allow both roles to stay in their lane, because there are a couple of people, and Martin is actually a great example for that. He's amazing at data engineering, but he doesn't want to take care of a group or an organization of 150 people, and that's perfectly fine. So the people have to be reflective about what they can and what they want and what they don't want and what they are not really capable of doing. So therefore, you being an organization have to allow that space and support the people in their growth and in their development.
There's a question or comment here.
I think it's fine. So change is, or being scared of change is our human nature. How do you identify people that embrace changes and are not so skeptical about the concept?
I guess what you need to do is two things. The first one is identify the people that are so-called informal leaders. The people that make sure that a connection is happening within your organization, that are the knots in your communication system, and make sure to have them on board. So take people from your organization, give them an active role in that change, and make sure they communicate that. And secondly, you have to over-communicate during those periods of change. So on all hands, if you have it once a quarter, during a situation that is new or that is uncommon, might lead to the requirement that you have to do your all hands once a month or even once a week and sit down with each and every single employee who is not on that growth path yet, and take the time to explain a lot to him or her, take the time to actively engage with those people in order to give them an active role in that change.
What I really like, and the question is that you stated something that actually most people don't communicate like that. not only in our industry, but in general, people always say change is good. It's one of the 10 company values of Project A. Change is good, right? Everybody says, yeah, sure, change is good. But the truth is, like, really, most people don't really like it. And that's the thing about values. Values probably don't mean like, let's say what we all think or so. It's something that you decide. It's like the stick that you put into the ground, you say, this is how we want things to be. Because they are just happening. They're implicit. It's just like change. I mean, like, accept it or not, but change is happening all the time in our industry faster than in any other. So you might not like it, but it's just happening. So you have to cope with that, and you have to react to that, and you have to deal with it in a very good way. Is a question how to find if people embrace change or like or can cope with change once they're in your company or in the recruiting process?
Do you have a formula in the first interview process?
So something that I like to do is surprise my interviewees with something unexpected. Like not to go through all the standards and maybe even like before say we will be talking about this and that. And then we're just talking about something different.
Like a goat?
Like a goat. He really likes change and he's good in like, that's great. No, and doesn't have to be like a super hard test or so. It's very often it's enough that you just like divert to a different topic and then you feel how people react. I'm not saying if they're insecure, don't hire them, but in general, if they get angry or so, then I would see that as a little bit of a red flag. Yeah, last question because I think we are, or do we have one more? No. No, our MC says no. We will be around and you can keep discussing with us for the rest of the day probably. Thanks very much for listening. I hope it was interesting. Enjoy the rest of the day.